My name is John Fitzpatrick. I'm the founder, CEO of Matang. We are a solution provider that has specialized over the last 3 years at implementing CluedIn and the Microsoft Purview stack and a bunch of other things to help our clients implement their data governance needs. Here today to talk a lot about the CluedIn platform, but there's kind of a unique partnership between CluedIn and the Microsoft Purview tools. And this is something that I'll get into and kind of show how they work together. But when we talk about data governance, there's a lot of different things that are needed. But when we talk about cataloging, lineage, and classification, master data management, reference data management, this stack provides all of that. Our use case today is we're going to kind of talk about a merger, an acquisition. This is something that a lot of organizations have gone through over time. As we're going to talk about two companies here. We have peanut butter and jelly, two companies that merge together. Now, these logos here, we had some fun with generative AI. They made these pictures for us. Looks great. But generative AI sometimes has some problems, and in this case, it didn't come out quite perfect. Well, this is a great example of what happens when you bring two companies with different data sets together. I'd like to start by just reading something from the DMBOK. In most organizations, systems and data evolve more organically than data management professionals would like. Particularly in large organizations, various projects and initiatives, mergers and acquisitions, and other business activities result in multiple systems executing essentially the same functions, isolated from each other. These conditions inevitably lead to inconsistencies in data structure and data values between systems. This variability increases costs and risks. Both can be reduced through the management of master data and reference data. So this is how Chapter 10 of the DMBOK, which is all about reference data and master data management, opens. It's the story of one of the biggest challenges that all of us data professionals have faced across all of our tools. So this is an area where Purview and CluedIn come in, because together they provide kind of a holistic architecture. And there's huge opportunities available to any organizations that can leverage organizational data, launch new products and services, launch lots of new stuff. We call this bringing together true insights. And this is where real magic happens. So when we bring these two together, one of the great things that happens is this covers your data cataloging, your data lineage, your classification and access controls, your security, quality, your cleaning, enrichment of your data, more reference data, and workflows, and master data, AI enablement, hierarchies, and being able to export that data and use it in other systems. All of this is brought together by this stack of having Purview and CluedIn together. So we talk about the merger of these two companies. They thought they'd come together because they had a really great product idea. They wanted to come together and bring a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Now, they might not have done some market research. And just show me your hands. How many people here have made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before? Yeah, they're going to have some competition. Let's talk about the data domains that we're going to look at today. And this is very common for a lot of companies, but we have one company, Peanut Butter, who had Business Central. Inside of their system, they use it for HRIS, so they have employee data, they have product data, they also have their CRM and their sales and stuff in there, so they have a customer data, vendor data, they got procurement in there, they have contacts for their CRM, they have companies. Jelly, not quite as organized, didn't have it all in one system. For their employee data, they've been using Gusto. For their CRM data, they've been using HubSpot. So the data domains here, they have contacts, they have people in here, and organizations. And in particular, we're going to spend a lot of today looking mostly at either people or organization data inside of CluedIn. The challenge comes when we have these different systems. We want to start trying to get insight. We want to start trying to get value and unification between these organizations merging. How do we do that? Well, this is where CluedIn kind of fits. It's in the middle, where we connect it, it gets data from both, it merges them together. So with that, it's time for the demo. So this is the CluedIn interface. We'll go through a lot of the different features that this has, but I'm going to start with the CEO of Peanut Butter and Jelly, Jonathan Grant. And so we can search for any person, any entity that is a part or loaded into the system can be found through the search. And it's fuzzy matching. You might have noticed when I typed John up there, there was a lot of other stuff that came back. But it does a really good job of bringing fuzzy match. So when we look at this first page, there's things around data accuracy, kind of the quality of your data. Haven't had this running long enough to show trends, but after having data loaded in here for enough time, we start getting trends that show on these charts, relevance over time, not very high right now, but there's ways in here to improve these metrics. What we see on this first page is we're able to look at properties that are at the top level. One of the big things in CluedIn is the kind of the semantic model. So when we look at the properties page, this is a combination of properties that come from different, actually I'll go back to overview for just a second. These information sources down here, when it's talking about common, Gusto, and BC, this is data that has been merged together from different sources. So it's found the combination of this data through a deduplication job and merged these records together. When we look at the properties page, we're able to see what the field name is, so employee ID or source or whatever. Right underneath of it, we have the vocabulary semantic model. This is something that I'll talk a little bit about farther on, but the semantic model in here is for any of us that are into data cataloging and stuff, is a great thing to have. Continuing along, Zach mentioned that CluedIn is built on top of Neo4j as a graph database. So we're able to show in here the relationship between entities. This can be between, Jonathan Grant is here as the CEO. We have people that report to him. We have edge properties in here, so there's information that gets stored about the relationships between your entities. There's phone numbers in here. We have addresses in here. We have email addresses and different things. But it's you build out, start pulling your different entities apart into single objects. They can then be related with others. So if we started looking at these addresses, we'd see who else works at those addresses, who else lives at those addresses, who else is working there or related to them. Same for phone numbers, same for email addresses if it's an office email or something like that. So it pulls the data into CluedIn, but it retains pointers to those source systems. So we make entity codes that are kind of a direction that tell us where it's coming from and the identifiers that it beats there. So this pending change is a part of workflow. I don't have anything to show here, but it's as data stewards do their work, as different processes get built in here to update data, there can be changes that need approval. So those would show in here, data stewards can come in and approve it or reject it. We can also use the Power Automate to help with the workflow process. When we look at this front page, first thing we see up here on these buttons is basically ways of getting data into CluedIn. We can do it through importing of files, through importing from database connections, from ingestion endpoints, or from manual data entry. CluedIn is thought of, Zach introduced it as modern master data management or modern data management. It also does your metadata management. You could use it for that. You could use it for reference data management, for reference lists, for things like categories, for currency codes, or for country codes, or things that a lot of companies have different territory definitions and stuff. You can use the manual data entry for that. There is also a Power Apps integration, which allows you to either inside of CluedIn have Power App showing, or in an external Power App be able to edit your data and have your reference data managed that way. So for all the data that we've brought in so far, we've done it through using the integrations, or the endpoint integrations. And I talked about the partnership between Microsoft and CluedIn here. All of the data that we've brought in has come through Microsoft Fabric data flows and their data pipelines that are part of the Fabric platform. So this is very modern. Fabric's been around for less than a year. But all of these endpoints here are created from those, for getting data from the data fabric. We'll take a look at what happens from pulling the data in. This is pushed from the data fabric directly into CluedIn to this endpoint for HubSpot contacts. We get a sample of the data, so we can kind of look at, hey, what's the data look like before we actually map it to the semantic model and load it into CluedIn. We have a process of mapping the incoming fields to vocabulary fields as part of the semantic model inside of CluedIn. It has an auto mapping feature that does a really good job. But once it's done that, you can also go in and edit it and make sure that it matches up right. There's ways of kind of putting some editing of the data, some cleaning of the data before you load data into the model if you want to. Things like standardizing a phone number or cleaning up dates or stuff like that. You can do that beforehand, and any rules that you do here will apply to all data that's coming into this endpoint from then on. You could have validation rules added to this, or ways of processing the rules. There's also ways of quarantining data if it doesn't match the validation. You can then come in and take a look at the records that have been put in quarantine and say, yep, we don't want to load that, or, oh, we can fix the data and then load it in. And then there's ways of monitoring the data for things. So in this case, there was a couple of records in here that had an issue and failed. So we get that, we can retry directly, and through the logs, we're able to dig in and figure out, hey, what actually happened? Why did this, what went on with that? Quite powerful as far as a way of getting data in. So I'm going to hop over to Purview real quick. So this is just kind of showing well, inside of CluedIn, there's an integration directly with Purview. This is a glossary term that was scanned from the data from CluedIn. We've come into Purview and added in definitions and who your data stewards and experts are and all that stuff, but you can come in for all the different fields and control the definition, the description of all your glossaries and stuff. Okay, so when we look at the collections, this is one of those, this is scanned directly from CluedIn into Purview. The lineage is something that is always a question. Where did the data come from? So when we're looking at the organization entity inside of CluedIn, that data is coming from, Business Central vendors and contacts and customers. It's coming from HubSpot information. What connections, what data flows was that a part of? If we look at the loader that was actually pushing data in, what other parts are part of this? What fields are there? All of this is available, and this is through the automated scanning of the different systems that Purview and CluedIn have together. So really powerful, and it goes all the way back to basically the source in this case, so back to the Business Central source. So we've connected Purview to these systems. It's connected to SQL database, to the fabric, CluedIn, and it's pulling all that in and merging it together. So when using the ingestion endpoints in CluedIn, these are basically, the data is getting pushed to it. So you would need to build your process, in this case inside of the Microsoft Fabric, to push the data into CluedIn when it's getting changed. So if you want to have a Delta crawl or something like that, or incremental loads, that would need to be built in your data pipeline process in the Fabric to do that. One of the main ways that we'll do it if you don't have that built in is just through scheduled refresh. Depending on the size of the data, if it's small enough, you could just reload the entire thing every single, do it every 10 minutes. It's a really fast interface. So I've loaded millions of records in this, and not too much time. So, about data governance, some of the things for us to, we always care about data quality. So there's quality metrics that are sampling the data, looking at it, recommending ways to make it better. We also want to be classifying the data, looking for sensitive data. So it does that, looks for personal identify PII type data. You can set all this up to be finding things, but it'll find that and give you reports, and you can have the racing model for role-based access control in here. You can create your own roles, assign things, but who can do all this stuff is built upon that. There's also data retention rules, and one of the big uses of CluedIn in Europe has been for GDPR compliance requirements. So subject action requests can be ran through here and connect back to all the source systems and stuff. Next, let's talk a little bit about preparation of data. So when we talk about, hey, we have the data quality, we have some issues, we want to fix it. There's multiple tools inside of CluedIn to help do that. We can prepare data before it gets loaded. We can also run a clean job. So a clean job. In this case, we're looking for ways of cleaning the addresses. So we have records in CluedIn where, and this is probably familiar to almost everybody here, where you see addresses getting loaded that might be doing things like missing zip codes, or in the address line to field, we have almost the entire address, including the city and the state. So we can use clean to separate that out and pull out the fields. What this step would do would be to separate the state and the city off of that address to field, populate that into the state field, and then can load it back into CluedIn. Also enrichment of data. So the ability to reach out to other sources, reach out to Google Maps or libpostal, open corporates. We have enrichers that have been built for D&B or for Clearbid or other places that we can pull external data in via identifiers that those other systems have and enrich the data from external sources inside of CluedIn. Really powerful capability. For the engine room, this is a way of monitoring what's been happening. So there's a lot of different parts that make CluedIn able to do stuff, but there's a lot that happens. So we have different databases for search, for relationships, different things and ways of monitoring this for kind of the sysadmins. Now let's talk about management. So we talked a little bit about the semantic model. We have data domains, which are kind of your entity types. And then a lot of the semantic model is your data catalog, your vocabularies. I'm just going to really quickly go into this because it's something that is actually one of my favorite things in here. But if we look at, let's say, person, for example, we have people, but we have vocabularies that map. And there's a hierarchical level in the vocabularies. Really quick, going to just look at the first name field. There's a lineage that is traceable to all the different parts of where that field gets used. We have deduplication capabilities. So in here, I've already built in some deduplication jobs for people, for locations, for organizations. But this is a way of coming in, putting rules in place. This has fuzzy matching capabilities. Getting to look for person name variations. So, hey, Robert, Bob, Bobby, different names like that. It already has capabilities already built in for that. We can look at the results from that, analyze it, merge them together. One of the, I think at the beginning I mentioned a little bit about some AI augmentation. We have the ability to use OpenAI inside of CluedIn to help augment the data, and help clean your data and stuff. So one of the things in the data, it was missing zip codes. So built in a process to utilize OpenAI to use the data that we do have. We had lat and long on quite a few of them. So why don't we take that latitude and longitude and look it up to find the zip code. Hadn't seen many endpoints out there that do that. OpenAI does it actually fairly well. So we're able to just build a rule in here that will take a lookup, take the information that exists in the data, send it out to OpenAI and bring it back, and we've got that data in. Did the same thing for a job for phone numbers. I can show you that in a minute. Actually, I think, yeah, here's an example of a phone number in here. There's it's just in normal format, but if I do a reprocess entity, refresh my screen, it just went out to OpenAI and formatted that phone number as an E164 standard format for the phone number. So pretty powerful ability to just use generative AI, use OpenAI or other tools to help increase our data. A lot of times, we talk about the semantic model of people. When people can have lots of different types of people. You can have your employees, your customers, your family members. There's leads out there. There's with all the different types of people. I like to model it all as a person, but you can use glossaries to have those different views almost of people. So you can completely create different semantic models around each of those, not different semantic models, but different views of the semantic model for each. The org chart hierarchy, well, we can create hierarchies and build them. I think I already built one for, well, started to build one for cost, but if we search for this, you can drag in. We have a few different variations of the company that are already here, but if we looked at them, we could figure out which reports to who, if there's a structure when one of them's companies, one of them's customers or vendors, and how they relate. You can build that, and you can build subsidiaries in. And when we take this model and save this, publish this in, if we go look at the record that was there, and I should have done this beforehand so you can see what it was like before I did that, it creates the relationships between these. Any system that we're exporting the data to, so we have stream processes, and this is a stream process going to an Azure Event Hub, which is basically a Kafka stream out. So anything that is listening to that Kafka stream can then, it will get those changes that I just made and load them out. The question is it possible in a Power BI model to be able to look at that lineage and say, where did this number get calculated from? To basically be able to track back for this measure, what was it sourced from? That depends. It's not just automatically going to do it for every single source that you're pulling data into Power BI from. But if you have taken the time to connect Purview to each of those sources, to have Purview connected to your data pipeline, and anything that happens, it will be connected, and Microsoft is continuing to improve the capabilities here so that, I'd say probably within the next year, we can do that for the majority of sources, but it's as long as you have Purview already connected to those other systems. So it's not just going to do it without work and effort ahead of time. Yes, ma'am?
So CluedIn is a modern MDM platform, but I'm curious, does it support 4 different styles of MDM implementation?
CluedIn acts kind of like a hub. So it will pull data in, and it can write stuff back to the source systems. That requires mesh query capability inside of it, which is advanced and is a little. It can do it, and we've built that for a few of our customers so far. But yes, it can do that.